Hello everyone, welcome back to ptet.chemistry channel. So in the last bit of this lecture tutorial on chemical structure and bonding, I'll just cover this very brief topic on metallic bonding. So there are just two bits of the learning objective as outlined by the Cambridge curriculum, the Cambridge syllabus. So first of all, you need to be able to define the metallic bonding. So metallic bonding is defined as this electrostatic force of attraction between something and something. So like for ionic bonding, is the electrostatic force of attraction between the positively charged and negatively charged ions that are formed as a result of transfer of electrons from the metal atom to the non-metal atom. For covalent bonding, is the electrostatic force of attraction between the two positively charged nuclei and the bonding electrons, and the localized bonding electrons are being attracted towards the two positively charged nuclei, and that is a result of sharing of electrons between the two non-metal atoms. And remember that when you have two metal atoms, between two metal atoms, they are not going to enjoy forming ionic bond, because neither one likes to gain electrons. They are not going to enjoy sharing electrons, because both of them really like to lose electrons. So what they do instead is, if it's just bonding between metal atoms, then they'll just form metallic bonding, which is just this electrostatic force of attraction between the positive ions, so meaning cations. And how do you get cations? You get cations when the metal atom loses electrons, but in the context of metallic bonding, there is no non-metal to receive the electrons, so you just shed away your valence electrons, and that valence electron is suspended in this sea of delocalized. It should have been valence electrons to be exact, so sea of delocalized valence electrons. Okay, as a result of your metal atoms shedding away these valence electrons, that you get cations, but there are no non-metal to receive these electrons, therefore you do not get ionic bonding. Metallic bonding is between metals, so this is for metals, and guess what metals are? All metals are elements. And where do you find elements? You find elements in the periodic table, and in the previous topic as initial bit of atomic structure, we covered on what elements, compounds as well as mixtures are. So elements are the simplest substances that cannot be, they are pure simplest substance that cannot be further broken down into simpler substances by chemical method. Alright, so they only contain one type of atoms. So for metallic bond, again, electrostatic force attraction between the cations in a giant metallic structure and the sea of delocalized valence electrons. So the syllabus itself is not really a full it is a full definition, but I don't really like it that much, because they did not emphasize that it's to do with valence electrons, and that is often the difference between students who know it and the students who don't know it, and therefore the students who will have developed some sort of wrong concept later on if they don't realize that only the outer shell electrons get delocalized, only the outer shell electrons get lost in order for the metal atom to form the positive ions known as cations. So when you have metals are the elements, so it will have metallic bonding, and therefore you will have giant metallic structure. So the lattice structure is giant metallic. If you want, you can use lattice, but since we are used to the idea of giant ionic structure, giant molecular structure, and we have simple molecular structure, so we might as well stick with the idea of structure, giant metallic structure. The lattice itself refers to a repeated array of how the lattice particles are actually being packed. So in the context of metallic solid, you have metallic bond between this and that. So your lattice particles are the cations suspended in a sea of delocalized valence electrons. Sea of delocalized valence electrons, or in this case they say delocalized sea of valence electron. Again and again and again is the valence electrons only, not all your electrons, only your valence electrons, and therefore this depend on group number, because in the previous topic you should be able to appreciate that the syllabus say the group number states that how many valence electron does that particular atom has depending on the group number. The group number is given in the periodic table as the Roman numeral right above each group, which is the vertical column. There's each group in the periodic table. You get a positive metal ion as a result of you shedding away or losing your delocalizing away your valence electrons. So they're just given like very common examples here. So copper, the symbol is Cu, magnesium is Mg, iron is Fe, chromium is Cr, aluminium is Al. So these are all within your syllabus, because eventually you will do something called qualitative analysis practical, and you got to know the formula of these metal atoms, and you got to know the formula of their metal ion, which you will do later on for your practical studies. And therefore it's important to get familiarized with the symbol to represent this particular element. So in metallic crystals, the metal atoms are assumed to be spheres, which is why we are drawn them as spheres. The electron obviously don't have a particular shape, and the sphere, the spherical metal cations, are closely packed together in a regular pattern. That's why we have this lattice of ions. And be careful, it's not anion. Okay, do not ever say the term anions when you use to describe metallic bonding. Do not ever mention anion, because metals are elements. Elements are not compounds. When you have cations and anions, you have ionic compounds. Compounds are not elements. Metals are elements, and therefore elements do not contain cations and anions, and therefore the moment you mention anion, it is no longer metallic bonding. Game over. All right. So properties of metals, we talk about the structure and bonding of metals, and metals will have high melting and boiling point, because you've got to say metals or whatever metals, example whatever is asked in the questions, have or has a giant metallic structure. You got to mention the structure first of all, and therefore melting, or in the context of the question, sometimes they ask on boiling, so you got to decide what does the question actually ask you. Okay, requires, continue here, a large amount of energy to break the strong metallic bond. It is not enough. You got to say between cations, between the metal cations and the sea of delocalized valence electrons. Okay, you do not want to leave anything to chance, because the more you use this in your explanations, in your essay explanations, the better you will get at appreciating other type of question, which will ask you on structure bonding. Structure and bonding refers to structure, what bonding you have, which might not be what you break. Okay, so you got to think about the structure and what exactly do you need to break. For metals, you need to break strong metallic bonds between the cations and the sea of delocalized valence electrons. Electrostatic force attraction between something positively charged and something negatively charged, you need energy to break. Okay, and you need a large amount of energy to break, because it's a giant structure, it's a giant metallic structure. So high melting and boiling point is a physical property. The other thing is also a conductor of electricity and heat. So obviously you know metals are good conductor of heat and electricity, and they always like to ask why can metal conduct electricity. If you think back on the structure of metals, what do you have? You have sea of delocalized valence electrons. Your valence electron get delocalized. Delocalized means not localized. Localized means fixed in the electron shell, but delocalized means not localized, no longer fixed in the electron shell. So if they are no longer fixed in one place, then you have them freely moving. Then you have free or mobile electrons, so they are freely moving, and because they are freely moving through the giant metallic lattice, therefore you can conduct electricity. Electricity is to do with current. Current is a flow of electron. If your electrons are free or mobile to move around, because they are actually delocalized, they are not localized, so they are free to move around, they are mobile to move around, therefore they can conduct electricity. In terms of heat is to do with exchange of kinetic energy. Remember back in states of matter, your very, very first topic and the very, very common mistake that people make about temperature. So temperature is defined as average kinetic energy. Average kinetic energy of the particle. So temperature is not hotness or coldness as you would have defined a few months ago, and as I've defined for you a few months ago, you should be able to appreciate now. Temperature is the average kinetic energy of particles, and therefore conduction of heat is to do with exchange of this kinetic energy of particle as per kinetic particle theory, your very first topic on states of matter, right? So this is basically just explaining why copper is an electrical conductor. So in terms of the structure, copper metal has a giant metallic structure. It has copper cation. It has sea of delocalized valence electrons. I really need to improve on their explanation here. So you have this attraction, which is called metallic bonding. So metallic bonding between the cations and the sea of delocalized, again, valence electrons, is responsible for metallic bonds, and you can the delocalized electrons can move in the presence of electric field, and therefore it can conduct electricity. This is a bit wordy, or you can just say it has giant metallic structure, and therefore metallic bond between the lattice particle, which is this as well as this, and therefore you have free mobile electrons that can move through the lattice, and therefore you can conduct electricity. Lastly, these are very important property of metal. Okay, so back in when I say back in the days, I'm talking about like thousands of years ago, when people went to war. They don't have guns, they don't have machine guns or all these cannon and whatever. So back then they'll use sword, they will use all those things, they are made of iron, and then they will try and strengthen the sword by creating stronger and stronger material, right? Okay, and at some stage you might have heard that the sword itself, they might use a hammer. So blacksmith are the people who work on these kind of metals. So they use a heavy hammer, and they keep on hammering the metals until into a very fine sheet, and then they can cut through meat or cut through whatever, right? Okay, so the fact that you need to keep on hammering the metal in order to make it thinner and thinner is a property of a metal, because when you think about the structure of a metal, so these cations are suspended in this sea of delocalized valence electrons. When you apply force, so the stress here referred to when you apply a force in this direction, the layer can slip. So the layers can slide over one another. So we are not breaking metallic bond, you are just sliding the layer over one another by putting force on it. All right, so this is called sliding over the layers, and therefore you can hammer it into different shape. Therefore metals are malleable. Okay, when I say our memory is malleable, means that we can easily shape our memory into something new. All right, so malleable means easily shaped into something new by hammering, and that is a result of metal having the giant metallic structure, where you can use force to slide each layer of these cations, the lattice particles, onto slide over each other essentially. All right, the other one is a metal can be drawn into fine wire. So this is a property of metal called ductile, ductile. So these two are very important. Metals are malleable, metals are ductile. So ductile means it can draw into fine wire. If you think about copper wire, or when you think about tungsten filament, so you must have heard of tungsten filament in light bulb. So in the traditional light bulb before LED, tungsten is widely used as the filament. Filament is the thing inside the bulb, so that is filament. So tungsten is used because tungsten has very, very high melting and boiling point. Among all the metals, tungsten has one of the highest melting point, and therefore it can withstand high temperature. As you could see back in the days, well, in fact, if you have used one of these bulbs, you know how hot this bulb actually gets, and therefore this filament inside is actually very hot. It needs to withstand very high temperature, and that's why we use tungsten, because it can withstand very high temperature, because it has high melting point. The other concept is that this tungsten filament is very fine wire, and of course we use copper wire. Copper wire was used for internet connectivity. So back before we have fiber optic, which give us the high speed internet these days, before fiber optic came around, we actually had to use copper wire for all those well, internet connectivity. All right, so copper wire is still used in many other countries, but they're much lower than fiber optics, and sooner rather than later, eventually they'll be phased out as well. But it's a copper wire. Copper is a metal. You can draw it into a fine wire because metal is ductile. Metal is also malleable. That's why you can shape the you can apply force to a metal and you can hammer them into different shape. And that's it really. That's it on chemical structure and bonding. With these last lecture tutorials on metallic bonding, we have covered every single chemical structure and bonding that any 14 to 16 years old curriculum would prepare you for. Structure and bonding is the most important year 9 concept, okay, because everything onward from now, whenever you think about properties of substances, we all come back to structure, bonding, structure, bonding, structure, bonding. They all affect properties, physical properties, and sometimes chemical properties as well, right? But chemical property, usually we look at how many outer shell electron does it have. All right, so structure and bonding are very, very important. I emphasize again, and it's a definite question in every single 14 to 16 years old curriculum. Okay, so that's why there will be a long topical test on this, because these are very highly popular questions, including all the specific case studies that are often asked as per the syllabus. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you got any questions, find me in school and rest up the issue straight away before your test, before it's too late, and make sure you finish all the work that have been assigned for you as well. All right, as for the other viewers and subscribers, if you got any questions, feel free to leave me a comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Just click the button on the bottom right, and you can follow me on social media at Facebook, IG, as well as Twitter at ptet.chemistry. So ptet.chemistry, and you can connect with me there and share with me stuff if you want to. All right, so see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.